Hey guys, my name is Logan Stats and I'm a saxophone performance major here at BYU. And Dr. Nielsen asked me today to tell you guys a little bit about how the reed and the mouthpiece impact the sound a saxophone makes. So these are probably the most important factors in determining how a saxophone is going to sound. One acts as the source of the sound, and one acts as the filter of the sound. So the reed is the primary source of the sound. It's what actually vibrates when you put it up against a mouthpiece and you blow into it. That's what actually makes the sound. The reed impacts sort of the tone quality of the saxophone. So, for example, if a reed is too hard, the reed will be it will be harder to make the reed vibrate. It won't vibrate as well, which gives it a sort of stuffy noise, a stuffy sound. It can also sound breathy because you're just using so much breath to actually make the reed vibrate, so it doesn't really sound very good, and it's not. You don't want to play on a reed that's too hard. But then if it's too soft, it does the opposite, in that it'll sound thin, it'll sound tinny, and it just doesn't sound very good. So it's a saxophone struggle and a clarinet struggle as well to find a reed that balances to being too hard and too soft really well. And then the mouthpiece acts as sort of the filter for the sound. This will impact sort of the tone color of the sound. So I've got two mouthpieces with me. One is a jazz mouthpiece and one is a classical mouthpiece. For example, a classical mouthpiece will sound warmer, it'll sound fuller, it'll sound more direct. And they do that by making the chamber on the inside a little bit more narrow, if you can see that, than the jazz mouthpiece. Hopefully you can see that. But so a jazz mouthpiece is going to sound brighter, it'll sound edgier, and it'll sound, more jazzy. But so they do... Other jazz mouthpieces will be metal to get that edgier sound, because that's sort of what you want to sound like when you're playing jazz. So that's kind of the difference in mouthpieces. So I just thought I would quickly show you the difference really quick. I'll play a short jazz, a couple bars of a jazz thing, and then a couple bars of a classical thing, so you can hear the difference on both. So this is the classical. And then the jazz. And then the jazz mouthpiece. If you notice, it should sound edgier, it should sound brighter almost. Then the jazz. Yeah. So then that's the mouthpiece. That's the saxophone. And then she also asked me if I would go over some cool things that a saxophone can do. So one other thing that a saxophone can do is we can bend the pitch. We do that by it's really hard for me to describe, but we do it by moving our tongue in a specific way. I would say we also kind of do it by loosening the embouchure, which is how your mouth is placed on the mouthpiece. That's for those of you who don't know what embouchure means, it's kind of a weird word. But we'll lower the lip, we'll move our tongue back, and it kind of sounds really cool. So here's an example of that. So sounds a little funky, but that's also how we tune sometimes. If we're sharp, we'll lower our pitch just a little bit to get back in tune. And then another cool thing that a saxophone can do is the overtones series. We can play different, if I bring out different formants in the frequency, a different pitch will sound, which is super cool. So an example of that. It's not the most fun to listen to when we practice that, but it's super cool. So another example.